Howdy, folks. I'm Eva, that's him, and this is Hard Rock University. Let us know how the sound is doing. We are trying new microphone positions.
Hello, I'm trying this microphone position.
Hi, Brian. Hi, John.
It may do well, or it may be sounding just a little bit odd. We're not sure. Are we up? Can everyone see us?
I'm good, yeah. Okay.
Oh, of course she is.
What about him?
Just a minute. Okay, you were the first one to say something. Yeah, I should give him time to hear me and then respond. Okay. Alrighty, Brian. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you all.
So, even
A little quiet, but sounds normal according to Jeff Bybee.
Okay. So, Eve and I are both doing good physically. Yesterday, we went out and actually staked a claim for ourselves. And it was a relatively steep hillside, not ridiculously steep, but it's, it was steep enough that you had to be careful walking or you might slip. And I didn't have any problem, even because of sitting around a lot, has lost a lot of the, would you call it strength or endurance or both?
I'd call it both.
Both. Walking around Walmart is not the same as going up a hillside. So it was pretty close to the road, actually, like line of sight, 400 feet.
Brian says, can you drive to it?
Close enough.
Oh, hi, Rock Butcher. Well, I hope the life that happened was not bad life.
Yeah, hope it was good things. Anyhow, so we put up a Discovery Monument, didn't do much else. Weather was getting a little bit iffy, and, we're both in pretty out of shape condition, so we just decided to head back. And yes, there are old workings on it, Brian, otherwise we wouldn't have staked it. We have production records, basically about 50 tons of ore recorded in terms of production, with about 50 ounces of gold and about 1,200 ounces of silver and a bunch of lead. So it's obviously like a galena mine or something like that. So I say it was like 400 feet from a maintained road. So what the hell?
Yeah, well, it was 400 feet up a hill.
Yeah. So anyhow, it was an interesting experiment in terms of durability. I didn't have any issues. I didn't see you having any issues. You were just going real slow, right?
Yeah, I was short of breath.
She was short of breath? Okay.
Ended up having to drive kids around town to their sports.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I hope they did good in their sports, and I hope, everything's going well with the family.
Can you turn that light on when you get a chance?
No, we can't extend the road, Brian. It's up a hill. Yeah. No road is going to happen.
Yeah, it's not that thing. Although we should be able to set up a zip line to bring down ore if we needed to. We shall see what we shall see. It's not the sort of thing we're going to try and exploit anytime soon, but we now have our own claim. Doing some research on the regulatory environment here. I'll probably be filing for a small minor exclusion statement and a notice of intent on the top of the hill stuff here in a little bit, see what happens.
A wood track railroad.
Well, let's say we should be able to put a high line in pretty easy as long as we got one clear line of sight from a tree down to the road area, which should be pretty easy. You know,
Hello, Rock Butcher Katie.
muscle up. What?
Muscle Up 2 PR. Hello.
Hello, muscle up. Don't recall seeing you before. Welcome. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. We've both been kind of sick lately. She had some surgery a little while ago, and I just had a heart attack a couple weeks ago, but we're all seem to be on the mend. And so that's doing okay. I want to thank Dave Vanderwall. Today he swung by. Somebody had shut down an old an assay lab, and so he dropped off some of their chemicals and stuff here. Hey, Chris,
Hi,
how's it
Chris.
going? Thanks for the help the other day, Chris. And
Muscle Up says, OMG. Yeah, OMG, pretty much.
so, anyhow, Dave dropped off some assay chemicals, which will be very useful for the near future. I mean, we got enough stuff now to last us for years at the rate we've been going, right?
Yeah, but we're going to be going at a higher rate.
I think we're going to be
probably.
going at a higher rate. All of a sudden, in the last month or so, a lot of assay stuff has just been showing up out of the blue. So I have a feeling we're going to be setting up an assay lab here shortly. So that's it. And I'm glad to see Chris here. He helped us out last week. We had some visitors for the week, and they were looking for a microscope, amongst other things. And Chris was able to get it, give us a good recommendation and stuff. So they're going to get a nice microscope. And Chris was instrumental in that. As usual, he's pretty good at finding what's needed quick on the internet. You do know me under different. Yeah, I kind of assumed that when you said hello, Keith and Eva, but I don't know who.
It's not like it matters all that much.
Yep. How did the assays on?
We don't know yet because everybody that was supposed to have assays, yeah.
Let me get into the details. How did they go? They haven't yet, and the reason was ALS Global kind of dropped the ball. And so when they called for results, they're like, oh, what was that again? So they managed to locate them, figure out ALS Global has hundreds of locations around the world. But a lot of these locations are just intake facilities. So they don't actually do the assaying there, the analyses. They just kind of package them up and send them off. So those samples are currently in Vancouver. Hopefully they're in process as we speak.
Hopefully.
Again, hopefully we will have some results maybe tomorrow. The rush fee, which is double the standard fee, has been refunded because
Rock Butcher says at Muscle Up 2 PR. Aha, the penny dropped. Hey, bud.
But anyhow.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on those. Okay. We did a lot of work while they were here last week. We did some things. First of all, their ore itself was
also the lab, the
Yeah,
ALS lab in Vancouver is absolutely massive. I would love to see it someday.
Yeah.
I really would.
But anyhow, so it was a combination of extractive metallurgy, tutoring, other stuff, tutoring, and actually processing samples they brought with them to look at certain aspects. About the only thing I can do is free gold in general, although we did take 3 samples and put them on bottle rolls for about 48 hours with Eco Goldex, and then took the solution from that to the local lab, where the guy was out of town because his daughter had a tournament in Texas, and so he should be back tomorrow too, so he can run those samples. They paid for, well, they offered to pay for a rush there, but because of the way things are going, Ray was going to have them all prepped for him anyhow and lined up. So in theory, we will be getting a lot of results over the next few days. There was also samples that I did here that should have been dropped off at ALS in Twin Falls today. And so they're theoretically going to be done
Howdy, Red Wing.
sometime this week-ish.
Ish. I love the ish.
We have some tantalizing stuff. Who is this? From Arizona. Want to bet it's just a bill collector or something? Let's see. Hello. 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 I bet you're a computer, not an actual human being.
Brian Smith said if we need eyes in Central America, let him know. And a camera.
Okay. So, anyhow, we got, all we could really go on right now is the visible panable gold that we could recover in the samples that we had. Now, their mill process there is a jaw crusher to a hammer mill. Wow. Can't write, can't spell.
Excuse
Stand
me.
up to a ball mill.
With a sand screw.
To tables. And cons to leach. Okay? That's what they've got at the moment. Okay? And
To a gold trap, to another cold trap, then to the discard.
yeah,
Yeah, pretty much, Chris.
entirely possible.
Sorry, your hand still hurts.
So we have very little information on what's actually going on. Now that they were here, they're intelligent, they're attentive, they pay attention. You can tell that because they ask good questions later, you know. So they're applying the knowledge in a theoretical thing in their brain. So you know they're paying real good attention. And easy to get along with and everything. I think it'll work out well, but we have precious little information on what's happening hither, thither, and yon. So we spent time teaching them how to hand pan the microfine gold. We told them where they need to sample, how they need to sample and such, so that in the near future, we should have a really good idea what's going on. As it is, once we get some assays back, we'll have a much better idea of what's going on. But one of the complicating factors is there's a lot of sulfides in there. And whenever you have sulfides, the question becomes, is the gold what?
Brian said it looked like they could use a sand screw to use as a slime reducer and send the sand back to the table.
Well, unfortunately, the sand is what they're sending back to regrind.
Yeah,
But anyhow,
and they have a sand screw.
yeah, they do. So once we get some analysis, I'll be able to do a little more thing. But anyhow, so we got this situation where we don't know what's going on. However, we have one ore sample, basically feed after the jaw.
Well, Butcher says,
What?
I hope any Canadians in here cast their vote today or earlier. Tonight is the big night.
Yes, it is. Very important. So we got a lot of sulfides. The sulfides can just be coincident with the gold. The gold can tend to be on the exterior of the sulfides, or the gold can be distributed almost molecularly through the sulfides. They're all different possibilities that are all plausible. And so when you have a sulfide concentrate, there's a huge question as to what do you have to do to get the gold out of the concentrate, assuming, of course, that you have concentrated the gold well. Now, it appeared to me, based on just the panning results, that the concentration was less than effective. Okay? Because they have roughly a 200-to-1 ratio between the amount of tonnage they're throwing in here and the amount of concentrates they're getting. So there's, assuming you were getting a good recovery, the gold concentration in the concentrates, or at least the visible gold, should be approximately 200 times that of the feed ore. That was not the case in the pans we looked at. Okay.
No tellurides.
I don't know. Possibly. I think tellurides are a bright silver color. What is the density of this tellurides?
Chris says it would be interesting to see the MEA results on the sulfides.
Exactly. Chris, what's the density of a gold telluride in general? We did see some real bright, shiny silver stuff that in the pan seemed to act as if it was a very similar density to the sulfides. And when I say bright, white, shiny, I mean it looked like platinum group visually, but it was not behaving like platinum group.
Yeah, I mean, they can also be brassy.
Not brassy.
Did not see brassy.
Bright white.
Saw bright white.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking bright white.
Well, Brian, it was way too light to be platinum. It was down in the area on the pan where it would be native silver or...
Native silver might be... Even native silver is going to tend to be denser than a pyrite.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, it might have been... it wasn't a galena because the shape was wrong.
Yes. I say, it was...
And it was not mercury because...
Well, galena is typically not that kind of bright white either.
Chrome? No, I don't think so.
I don't think you get metallic chromium in nature. Don't know. But
well, also, it would be heavier.
Maybe Chris or Rock Butcher might have an idea. But we're running multi-element analyses on these things. Tighten it. I don't know. I mean, I'm talking like polished rhodium, white and silvery color.
But it was down in the pan where you'd find the native silver or the pyrites. It was well below the gold.
It was surrounded by pyrites in the pan. I say, we're talking bright, silvery, reflective, the silver luster, bright white, just like a polished rhodium. Hi, honey bunny. So, I have no idea what it is. Not arsino. I've seen our bright silver soft. It can have blue-purple flashes.
I didn't see any blue-purple flashes in there.
But, as I say, we really are not
There's some good-looking stuff, I'll tell you. They were not needle-shaped rock. As a matter of fact, they were not shaped like pyrites either.
You know?
I mean,
Yeah, they weren't.
Shape-wise,
Silver-like.
they were beaten up like you'd expect native silver or native lead to be, but they were by far the wrong color to be native lead.
Arsenal pyrite, if they can be that bright white, is a definite possibility. If so, it should show up on the multi-element. Shouldn't be, it should really show up there. That if I wasn't aware that Arsino could be that bright white, but if so, that would fulfill all the observations. So
Yeah,
and
it's probably observed for sure.
Roxas could be tellurites, possibly then, I guess. Hello, Mr. Lodak.
Well, hopefully we find out pretty soon that if ALS actually does their job.
XRF is not sensitive enough, Brian. We have 50 element ICP.
Not garlicky. That was one of the first things I looked for.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there was no odor associated whatsoever.
I don't think we took any pictures of that little one.
I did not take any pictures of it because I couldn't find my
Not pictures at the moment. We could have taken it with the microscope.
Now, rock, telluride's deformed by milling. Whatever it was definitely was malleable and was deformed by the milling because their ore is getting beat to death. This system, it's ridiculous. What they dropped off with ALS tried to charge them a pulps fee. Despite the fact that everything...
a crushing fee.
Yeah, a crushing fee. Despite the fact everything they dropped off, except for the head ore, was pulps. So...
Yeah. But anyhow...
There was that.
So, let's say we're going to have a lot more data soon, but the head ore was definitely not 1/200th of the concentrates in terms of visible gold. Not in the slightest. So it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. First of all, it was one sample of head ore, so that doesn't necessarily tell you anything. However, if that was anything close to representing the head ore, then we should have seen a whole lot more pannable fine gold in the concentrates. Now, when I say fine, we were actually recovering down to about 1,000 mesh on the panning. I don't know how, how good the recovery was at that, but it's pretty easy for us to get down to 500 mesh, which is 1,000th of an inch. And the gold that we saw, about the biggest we saw of any individual particle was about 100 mesh. The average was, 200 to 300, 400 range. And then we were seeing a significant amount down to about 1,000th of an inch. Some below that, but, the 500 mesh. Now that can be a simple artifact of the panning technique itself.
And hi, Mr. Lodak.
It's having problems. But the early indications are they've got something radically sideways in all of this. One of the things that would make sense is ball mill. Ball mills are notorious gold traps. Okay? And
I have to put that into solution, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want to try and concentrate it on a table and then put it in solution if you're losing all the gold someplace else. We have a couple of indications that the tailings themselves are seriously depleted in gold. I'm thinking that first panning we did of the tailings might have been cross-contamination because it didn't show up on the second pan of tailings.
Yeah. Density of telluride is 6.2 grams per cubic. It's brittle in pure crystalline form. Stuff I'd seen alloyed to gold was much softer.
Okay, that might explain it. That would be in the density range, and
we should know sooner or later.
Yeah, they didn't look like typical crushed brittle solids to me. They looked more malleable than that, but it's hard to tell. Now these guys are getting a really good microscope, so that it should be a lot easier.
Now, when they can take really good pictures, our microscope, the digital one, couldn't discriminate the color on that.
But yeah, they're getting a nice $1,200 microscope. You know.
No, it had structure. It was not mercury. It wasn't the right. It wasn't the right luster for mercury either.
If it was like mercury covered gold, amalgam, then it should have been up higher in the pan, up with the gold line.
Yeah.
And it was blood. It was with the pyrite.
Heaven knows there's plenty of mercury down there. We saw videos of people making balls of amalgam with their bare hands.
Oh yeah, they were making balls like this of amalgam. And
are we running the samples multi-element ICP?
Yes. Exactly. We're running a lot of the samples multi-element ICP. We're running a number of the samples fire assay. Probably about 50-50 fire assay versus fire assay and multi-element ICP.
Collaborate, sylvanite, and members of Telluride.
Could be.
Well, we shall find out.
Yeah. Well,
silver Telluride is a possibility.
Yeah, that would match. So they say we shall see. Once we get the test results, we'll see is there arsenic, is there tellurium, things like this. But clearly, their system is not working at high efficiency. They don't even have a good handle at this point on what the head grade is.
No, they haven't tried a Gemini yet.
Okay, thank you, Rock. That's what I was wondering, because they showed that on there as the ICP, so that's unreliable. Okay, very important. Thank you very much. He says ICP.
Yeah, I saw that, and my question is why. But
I don't know the details, but if Rock says it's unreliable,
obviously, Rock says it is. I mean, I totally believe him. I'm just wondering what the reason.
I don't know the technical reasons, but
because that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, but anyhow, let's say we need to get a good handle on all this. Hopefully, and we don't know at this point, but hopefully the hand panning will be fairly representative of call it the effective gold concentration.
ICP analyses 5 grams or less in the sample. Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. Thank you, Rock.
But, I get interrupted. If the rock, if the panning is fairly effective at determining where the gold is, then we'll be able to go through this system rapidly and get an idea exactly what is going on.
Thank you, Rock. Thank you, Chris.
Because
my curiosity is satisfied.
It's my impression that we can make some substantial improvements just essentially by small modifications and adjustments and stuff like this. But I have this creeping feeling that in order to really get good recoveries, we're going to have to get rid of the bulb. What?
Lauren says,
hey, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren. Chrome moly fractures from hammers are bright white. Would they show up in the center of the pan in the area you'd above pyrites but below gold, where you'd expect to see naked silver?
In the pyrites.
Yeah. In and just above.
Okay. They should be magnetic though, so we should be able to get them.
Yeah, that's a fuzzy slipper.
Yeah.
It's a black cat.
Yeah. But anyhow, so hopefully they'll have the ability when they get back there to start doing so. Let's say we've given them detailed instructions on what they need to start sampling and how they need to start sampling it to.
And unlike some people around here, they actually follow instructions.
Yes. And so we'll find out what's going on. Now, if the ball mill is sucking up gold like a black hole, which at this point in time seems like a reasonable possibility, there's really no good way to fix that, although the gold that's in the ball mill is going to stay there.
Lauren says it would be magnetic. Now we did use a magnet to try to pull any magnetics out of there, and it did not. Yes, we did.
On that sample?
Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
And it did not. It grabbed some stuff, but
I'm not sure that she is correct on that particular sample, but she might very well be.
We did, because are we talking about the sample that we ground up in the RC46?
Yeah. Well, as I say, the whole situation, one thing we did to try and define where the gold is with respect to the pyrites is they had a couple of samples. One was a concentrate sample and one was a roasted concentrate sample. And the roasted concentrates had not been remilled, but it was fairly small, so I just did it in a mortar and pestle. But both the samples, I hand panned the gold and sucked it away to try and do the best possible job. I mean, redoing small samples and stuff, but do the best possible job I could at getting all the free gold I could out of the samples. Now, that's clearly not entirely possible, especially hand panning, but the question is, how much did it drop the gold value of those samples? Okay, so if you have a concentrate samples that's X number of ounces per ton, and then after I pan the gold out, it's now 0.9 X ounces per ton, then a lot of the gold's probably in the pyrites. Okay, and so we'd have to do some further detailed analysis there. Yes, I know.
Yeah, that's what everybody's saying.
But if all of a sudden the gold concentration in the concentrates goes from X to like 0.2X, then it would indicate that most of the gold is exterior to the pyrites. So you could leach it and stuff like that and expect to get a pretty good recovery. That's one of the preps we did here to see what we could
just saying
determine. Same thing with the bottle rolls. We took, let's say, 3 of the samples, which are off for assay, and did bottle rolls on them with Eco Goldex, 48-hour bottle roll, and that will be out at the, we should get numbers back from that from the solution lab tomorrow.
It'll be
And
interesting to see what
when we compare that to the fire assay of those particular samples, then we'll have a good idea how much is leachable gold. Size-wise, everything I saw is easily leachable, not so much easily gravity recoverable.
Well, it doesn't help that everything's being ground to death.
Possibly, I would agree. Anyhow, another thing that we suggested they do is get a shop vac, and you got your shop vac here. Hose, go over to a bucket, inlet here, and then hook a relatively small hose, like 3/8 flex hose. Take this over to your tables and literally suck off the gold line. Okay? You're going to have way too much vacuum here, so you're going to have a bleed of some sort. Put a T in here and put a bleed valve so you can get enough suction to suck the stuff through that hose okay, but without collapsing the bucket. Now, mind you, they were smart enough, without asking, to already be working on a cage of some sort, some kind of container, to keep anyone from possibly stealing that stuff. They came up with that on their own like that. So that's a good sign. But one of the things that tends to happen when you've got a table, I know it works especially on a wave table, but if you've got a tabletop here, this is a side view, and you have, oh, let me get colors. I need colors. There they are. Okay. I don't have a golden marker. I'll use red. And then I'll use, oh, a lot of blue. Okay. I'll use blue for the, what typically happens is you're going to have a gold line up here, visible, and you will have a sulfide line like right there, and a fairly clean split between them, it appears. However, it's not unusual at all that this gold line extends way under here, just like the sulfide line can extend underneath the tailings, the gang materials. So you get these overlaps. If you literally suck that gold line off the top of the table, then like this, then the remaining gold can move up, more like that. And then as you suck it down further to the table, then what happens is you can kind of get that gold out from under the sulfides, if that's what's actually happening there. So that's one thing that's pretty cheap. Takes a real small shop vac to provide the vacuum for
Yeah,
that.
look, I mean, we got what, a $20 shop vac over here?
And so that would allow them to suck the gold off it, because once it goes off the end of the table, the split is about like this. So they're getting a lot of sulfides, and then they got to figure out how to get the
How about
gold out of it.
everyone hit like?
Yeah. Now, right now they're sending these cons to cyanidation, and again, they don't have a good analysis of what grade the cons are and how much is getting into the solution. They also do not have a real good solid liquid separation after they do that, and therefore
Depends on table design and setup if you get layered or clean lines.
Yeah. I would guess they're not getting real clean lines. These are not cleanup tables. I was thinking that they might want, depending upon what the tests reveal, it's entirely possible they'll want to take all their concentrates and run it to a cleanup table. That's why we're waiting on the samples. But very, very frustrating. Everyone's very frustrated because we need a lot of information to really figure out what's going on. But let's say the cyanidation, one of the problems a lot of people don't realize, I mean, they got an agitation tank, okay, with air spargers. And so in terms of agitating and
A scavenger table or 4.
yeah, and so that's pretty good for dissolving it, but there's a couple of things that are a significant thing. First of all, what's the weight of the solids? Okay, it's not necessarily accurately weighed, and there was no compensation made for moisture content. And yeah, the concentrates are coming right off the tables. They're definitely wet, not even just damp. So you're probably looking at about 20% solids right there.
Chris says the counterflow needs to be implemented across the flow sheet.
Entirely possible, Chris. We'll have to see exactly what's happening. We may just need to leach everything. We shall see. But anyhow, so if you don't take that into account, let's say you think you've got 1 ton of solids at 1 ounce per ton. So you expect an ounce, okay? Expect 1 ounce. However, if you've got 20% moisture content in them, then this is only going to come out to 0.8 ounces, and you're going to go, wow, we're only getting 80% recovery, even if you got 100% recovery. So that's a major complicating factor. Another thing is, when they're done agitating, they stop the agitation and wait for a day or so, and all this settles to the bottom, and then they siphon out the clear liquid, which means this has 20% solids or more. I mean, 20% liquid. So you've got losses of pregnant solution there that will add up to your apparent losses caused by the miscalculation of the weight. So there's a lot of adjustments that need to be made in the flow sheet and the sampling just to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, we're not even going to discuss that pressure vessel thing.
The way they're stripping carbon on some of the other things. Apparently one of the common, there it is. One of the common things.
And that is why I have no hair left on the top of my head. I hate reconciliation calculations. Oh yeah, Rock. I am totally with you on that one.
Anyhow, there's 2 ways the artisanal miners are getting gold right now. One is they have arastras and mercury. And that's the primary thing. Then they move that to cyanide. They call them pools, ponds? Ponds, okay? Which is basically vat leaching, okay? Now, I am going to try and get some video or still pictures of some of this stuff here.
Since you'd never believe us unless you saw it yourself.
And these guys, say literally, we're making balls of amalgam about that size. A little smaller than a tennis ball, about like a billiard ball, right? About the size of a billiard ball. And then they were retorting them and winding up with balls of gold the size of a billiard ball. And I'm not talking 1 or 2, okay? And so it looked really impressive.
Are any of their underpaid staff driving Land Rovers?
Not that we can tell, okay? I understand the question.
Educated guesstimations even. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty
So,
much.
from these, and for those of you who don't know what an arastra is,
It's cool.
you make a
whole golden rack.
yeah, they were. But anyhow, it's basically either a trench in good solid bedrock, or often it's cemented chunks of good hard rock. Often there's little steel rails or something in there. And there's an axle in the center and some cross pieces. And then they're dragging just big rocks, big hard rocks around to grind up the ore. And then they put in some mercury after it's ground up pretty good, and then recover the mercury and do that. The tailings from this will often go to cyanide ponds, which basically they go out and they level a small piece of ground, about the size of this office here. So, in the 10 by 20 foot range. And then they put some sideboards up. Look about 18 inches.
Yeah.
Throw a plastic liner in here. Throw those tailings in here. Throw some cyanide in here. And it all drains into a little reservoir here, and there's a bucket filled with carbon. And so it drains into here and works its way through the carbon, winds up filling this
Rock
reservoir.
says we call that a Chilean molino. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the Chilean mill that I know of has actually steel wheels. But yeah. And then from here, they just pump the solution back out here, and typically about 10 days. Okay, this is a form of vat leaching. And so they use that to recover gold from the tailings.
Yeah, and then what they do with it is really scary. It's just the mercury wasn't scary.
They never recover 100%, but they recover most of it.
Yeah, their retort scared Lauren and I when we saw a video of their retorts.
Well, one thing that Lauren said, you got a retort, for those of you who don't know, pressure chamber with a vent, and you put your amalgam in it, you heat it. Ooh, red. Need red. So you got fire down here, and then this tube goes over here. The air around it cools the tube, so the mercury vapor theoretically condenses, comes out the end of the tube, and there's a bucket of water here. Now, according to Lauren,
Yeah, and me.
it's a bad idea to put the end of this tube under the surface of the water,
Yeah.
because let's suppose that the fire goes out for whatever reason, the pressure in this mill or this retort drops, or let's say you run out of mercury.
Hi, Kodak.
Then as it cools a little bit, it can suck
Not
water.
even water cooling the tube. Yeah, exactly, Chris.
Exactly, just air. Then the water can come up the tube very rapidly. As soon as it starts cooling stuff ahead of it, it's going to drop the pressure.
Chris says, oh joy, suck back and boom. And
Yeah,
Brian
exactly.
Smith says, what about the missing mercury? Yeah, it goes in the air.
Yeah.
These are people that are playing with balls of mercury with their bare hands anyway, okay?
They're not playing with them. They're just handling them.
Rock Butcher says, I prefer the kind of retort you put fermented mash in and you drink the end product.
Yeah,
Many people do. I would not be surprised if these folks used theirs for that when they weren't recovering mercury.
Yeah, which would be a really bad idea.
Which would be a really bad idea, but one never knows.
Now, according to Lauren, the way you alleviate that safety issue is you end the retort above the surface
Hi,
of
honey
the water,
bunny.
but to keep it from escaping much mercury vapor, which is, of course, extremely toxic,
In a cloth bag.
you take some cloth, wrap it around the end, and stick it into the water so that it stays moist, but you can't suck liquid water back up there. So it acts kind of like a one-way valve. It'll let gas go out, but it won't let water go back in. But anyhow, yeah, there's Chris, exactly. So there's, yeah, ethyl mercury. I'm sure that would be easily absorbed into your body. Bad news. So anyhow, this is what they're doing currently, and what the gentlemen that were visiting here, Brandon and Jared, was they had put in a more modern mill, with jaw crusher and ball mill and all this other stuff. Unfortunately, there was a number of constraints on them where they couldn't take loads of time to test stuff. They weren't knowledgeable about the subject. And so that's the mill they built. Okay? I would not have built that mill unless I had real good reason to believe it's going to work, because the ball mill scares the heck out of me, and I think the tables themselves are unlikely to get super high percentages of hard rock gold into your concentrates unless that gold is contained in the sulfides, in which case now you got another problem getting them out of the sulfides.
Well, what scares me is that pressure vessel they use for stripping the carbon. That scared me.
Well, you notice the camera was way back.
Yeah.
For stripping the carbon from this, they use like an old propane tank, good sized one, where they welded a an outlet and a few other things. And they go in, and then they have Chinese tables, but they're production made. And anyhow, to strip the carbon, they use baking soda, cyanide, some alcohol, bunch of water, close it up, light a fire under that baby, and heat it up. And try not to overheat it.
Because it will blow up.
I don't think they have automatic pressure relief valves. Every once in a while, one blows up and goes 100 feet in the air. If you want to see what that looks like, watch Mythbusters. And that's
far from the sketchiest pressure strip I've heard of.
well, that's terrifying. But
Yeah,
anyhow,
that's really terrifying.
then after it's stripped, then they dump everything and then use a zinc cementation.
And Honey Bunny is
solution.
building a vibratory crusher. I want one.
Yeah. But anyhow,
I've tried to explain to people that I need one.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I know that. Obviously downwind.
yeah. Upwind is where I'd like to be. But anyhow, so what they're trying to do is bring modern technology and production capacity to an area that has a bunch of artisanal miners that are actually, making gold with their astros and stuff. It appears there is a high probability that they've got decent ore. They should be able to make good money. I'm quite concerned that their mill setup has some major problems with, every time I see a ball mill ahead of a table, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Kodak
that's
says
scary.
everybody's selling their gold. Nobody in their right mind is selling at the moment.
I think there were, because of international stuff right now, it's hard to sell gold down there. Because the central bank doesn't know how to price it or something like that. I forgot the exact
The government
details.
is doing strange things.
Yeah. But anyhow,
What else is new?
so say it's a complex situation. If I hadn't just had a heart attack and I didn't have any other reason, I'd probably be down there next week.
Stand a Connex on end and do a column leach.
Well, that's
Yeah, Chris said just getting some decent retorts in use would be a big improvement. Yeah.
well, I say there's a lot of things about this whole system that are concerning. The thing that most concerned me was comparing the concentrates to the head ore. I'm going, if those are representative, yeah, there's a big problem, a real big problem.
Everyone only knows where everything went.
It should be one of those things where we're not looking at individual percentage points here. We're possibly looking at orders of magnitude. So it should be pretty easy to quickly refine where the problems are and get them dealt with in one way or another. If it is the ball mill, then even though it's a lot of gold being stuck in the ball mill, it's literally stuck in the ball mill. So on a regular basis, you can simply disassemble the ball mill and clean it out. And so if that's what's happening, it's not that they're losing it, it's just they can't get it to refined gold stage very easily. There's a big time lag there. Yes, exactly. We told them where to sample all over the place there. Prices are so high to get the average folks to sell their gold, so we no longer have any. I don't think that's the issue with this particular situation for sure.
Well,
not only is it, do you know where it is, but nobody can steal it very easy either. It's not one of those places where somebody can just reach a hand in and snatch some. So in some ways, it's not a horrible situation, but it's not ideal. And the other thing that they've got, generally on a ball mill, you're going to have some kind of classification so that your oversize goes to regrind. And in this case, they basically have the ball mill here. Well, I'm using blue, darn it. And the discharge from the ball mill goes into the receiving thing for a spiral classifier, and that brings it and dumps it into the beginning. And but spiral classifier is basically a big screw set in a trough, and as the screw moves, the coarser material which settles the bottom is drug uphill and then discharged. Now, the problem with that is the material that settles. Well, guess what gold likes to do? Okay? So it could be a whole lot of gold in this area. It's hard to tell. Okay? But if you got a hammer mill here, which can have certain deadbedding issues too, possibly, but the discharge from that goes into the ball mill, we need to sample here. And then we need to sample the discharge out of the ball mill before it goes to the classifier or anything, and see, is this grade X, does it approximately equal X? You know? Because it wouldn't surprise me if this is like 0.5X. That would explain some of the things we observed. Okay? That may very well be happening. And say, in which case, it's not a disaster. They haven't lost the gold, but it's not going to be easy to recover it. On the other hand, it's going to be hard to steal it too. So, hey, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. There are indications that the ultimate tailings are relatively poor in gold, but that has yet to be proven yet. And I can think of some things that might be happening there that would affect the thing. No, honey bunny, basically vacuum in, vacuum out. Zero data, I say is zero data. We really don't know. Probably more like once a month, Brian. I don't think you want to tear a ball mill apart once a week. Okay? It's a fairly complex job. It's going to take several shifts to take it apart and clean it out. After that, you can leave the workers alone to put it back together, but I wouldn't leave them alone to clean it out, I'll tell you. These people are not making large quantities of money. So, and again, the gentleman we were dealing with, they seem to understand that pretty readily and intuitively. So, say we shall see what we shall see.
Weld an inspection plate to the mill.
To do what? Inspection plate to do what? Because you're going to have to remove the liners to clean it out. You got to remove the balls. You got to remove the liners. You got to clean all that stuff out and then concentrate it from there. You got to put all the liners back in, got to put the balls back in.
Brian says to the ball mill.
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot involved in general, okay? Especially something small like this, where you're not using heavy equipment to move stuff around inside the mill. I'd have to see the details, but, to drain samples? Nah, you got to take it off the end, just like it's running. You got to be able to sample it as it's running normally. You can't stop it and take a sample, because that's not what's going on. But you can take, say, a pan, and, once every couple minutes, just take another pan out of the outflow stream and just keep filling up buckets until you've done this for a few hours, and then settle the buckets, condense it and split it down, homogenize it and then split it down. But yeah, and they say if it's in the ball mill, if that's where the problem is, is probably a major annoyance. Later on, you might want to switch to impact mills. What is ball mill liner? Yes, it certainly can be, Jeff. Between the cracks, basically they're usually on a small ball mill steel plates that form a replaceable interior to the ball mill. And as such, as they get worn, they can be taken out and replaced so you don't destroy the entire mill itself.
The armor plating inside the mill, yeah.
Exactly. That's a good way of describing it, Rock. That will wear out over time. It's designed to be replaced. It gets in the cracks. It can get
Well, that's why
them.
they're getting samples now, Brian, and getting assays to measure the gold in and gold out.
Yep, that's exactly correct. So, that's it. We don't know, but I would recommend that nobody put a ball mill ahead of a gravity extraction without knowing for darn sure that it's not a stupid idea. Rubber liners are better. They don't wear as fast, strangely enough. Ball mills are kind of industry standard for grinding stuff because they are energy efficient, they're wear efficient, they do a really good job of grinding stuff up. But gold is not the same as anything else. It's so dense. That is not a good idea with gold. If you're grinding, say,
Copper or
sulfides,
pyrites.
a pyrite or whatever, it's fine. Especially if you're going to do a flotation. Sag mills are big. Okay, you don't have a small sag mill. Okay, but if you're grinding for flotation, it works perfectly because when you grind with the mill, a lot of this, the older hands know, but I have a feeling there's some people that have no idea these things.
Rod mills can be better for keeping your grind size consistent. Ball mills make a lot of slimes. Yeah, and they're grinding things to ridiculously small.
Basically, for those of you who don't know what a ball mill is, if you look at the end, it's a cylinder. It rides on bearings. There's a drive. The whole thing just turns. It's got a bunch of balls in it. As it turns, the balls get carried up and then fall back down, and all that bouncing around just beats the crap out of whatever's in it. The problem is to get out of the ball mill, it's got to get out the outlet. And there is the problem. It's got to go up. Gold doesn't like to go up. Now, if you have sulfides, then basically you're grinding the sulfides in the rock to where they both like to rise at about the same rate. Therefore, when you take them and put them in a flotation cell, where you're trying to float the sulfides up, well, they're both behaving pretty much the same except for whatever sticks to the bubbles. So that works pretty well. Which is the computer again. Hello? Computer again. So anyhow, ball mills are ubiquitous in the big mining industry. They're very efficient ways to grind stuff to 1 to 200 mesh. They're energy efficient, etc. They just tend to be really, really good gold traps. And the place that Lauren used to work, not too distant back, they used that. First of all, they had sag mills that he said they could actually pull the liners out, scrape the gold out of it, and put them back in about half a day, which is pretty amazing considering a sag mill is going to be at least 20 feet tall. Okay, but whenever they got short on money, they just pull the lining, scrape the mills, put them back together again. get, $250,000 or something like that. So they used it as kind of like a piggy bank. But anyhow, it's one of those things that it's great for some applications. It's horrible for others. This may be one of those applications where it's horrible. Likewise, a sand screw is not a good way to get the gold to your output shaft, to your output location. You can use a sand screw as a dewatering device after your separation, like the guys at Mount Baker do. They grind it in a hammer mill. Hammer mill's got a screen to, keep the grind size fine coming out of it. They run it over a table, then they dewater it. And theoretically, the gold has been taken out, so it doesn't matter what's going on there. The sand screw is fine in that application. As a recirculation device for the ball mill, I've got some real serious reservations about it. I think I'd much rather go to a vibrating screen or a trommel. You can make a trommel here and then have a conveyor or a slurry pump to
I
get it
still
back.
think that massively over grinding things may also cause more problems.
Oh, over grinding does not help at all.
Yeah, and I'm thinking a lot of that stuff is overground.
Oh, it's entirely possible. Again, this is why we're waiting for all kinds of assay results to figure out what the heck is going on, because there's a whole bunch of possibilities here. And
yeah, Jason is really good over there at Mount Baker. Yeah, Jeff, after the ore goes through the ball mill, especially if it's in there for a long time, does it become gold foil? Yeah, it can stick to stuff.
It can be jammed into the cracks and stuff. It generally won't be on top of the liners because that's a pretty abrasive environment. It can get in the cracks between them and stuff. But what it also does is it gets ground up even smaller. And the smaller it is, the harder it is to gravity separate. Again, you're working against yourself. This grinding apparatus is not ideal for a
The
gravity
microscope
extraction.
should help them answer the question of what liberation size is. Yeah, really, it will.
Oh, absolutely. I say there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before we start making any changes. So right now there's some obvious changes that are mostly involved in just sampling, and then there's some likely improvements that might double their gold. I don't know, but say the indications are we're losing large quantities, more than 10% of the gold is going somewhere. Lots more than 10% is going somewhere is the initial indication. We got to find out where, then we can fix it. You might do leach and grind. I discussed the advantages of carbon in pulp or resin in pulp. No, they're not roasting their ore any. Direct roasting of ore is usually not done because it's so energy intensive. Usually you would roast a concentrate. And that is another strong possibility, is if the gold is in the pyrites or stuck to the pyrites or in any way hard to get away from the pyrites, then you can theoretically make a heavy mineral concentrate, which is very rich in pyrites, and then roast it. Okay? They're only making like 200 pounds a day of concentrates. So that's easy enough to roast. So you would usually roast a concentrate, be it a flotation concentrate or whatever. Okay? Yeah. Why are you not there resolving losing gold? Well, first of all, I just had a heart attack. Right now, my health is uncertain.
And it's not a good idea to go to a remote third world country in Central America where you don't have insurance when you just had a heart attack.
You know, as I say, it would be foolish. Okay.
We're doing everything we can remotely, and
we can do a lot remotely.
And at least these people pay attention.
Yep.
And ask the right questions.
Okay. Yeah. That's about 200 pounds of supposedly high concentration cons out of 20 tons of material. So yeah, it's a real high concentration ratio. They may be losing a lot of stuff into the tailings. We have reason to believe that's a strong possibility. We have other indications that that's not actually happening. We shall see. Neat essay. I think that'll be okay there. Another thing that was kind of interesting coincidence. They're interested in using Eco Goldex. Yes, it is, Lars. They're interested in using Eco Goldex for the lower toxicity. Being Central America, I wasn't too sure, what the price is, what the, best way to do it or whatever. So I called a friend of mine, who had done work down there and worked with Eco Goldex down there. And I called him up and asked him about, are there suppliers down there, et cetera, et cetera. And it turns out that they had imported a substantial quantity to one of the neighboring country there.
If it helps you look good, Keith.
Yeah. And then found out that the activity of cyanide is better than the Eco Gold. It dissolves it faster. The kinetics are better, and it's cheaper. Okay, so this stuff is just sitting there. Last he heard, from the exact terminology used, it indicated to me it might have been 12 months ago, maybe longer, the last time he was familiar with where it was and how much. But there's a substantial quantity there that he'd be happy to get rid of at a very reasonable price. Then, I say, so that is kind of interesting. He was also saying, do your buddies there need somebody who really knows what they're doing in that area? And I said, probably wouldn't hurt. So when he calls back to see whether or not the Eco Goldex is still there, etc., we'll put him in touch with them. Because
how many head tons per day are being processed? Seems like they
20 max. Okay. They could be, but they don't know who. It is a strange situation. I'm not at liberty to discuss why. It's not ridiculous up from their point, but it is strange. Say they very well might be able to get essentially a local, somebody from within 100 miles to come across the border and help them out there. Interesting how these coincidences worked out. But so I say there's a whole lot of possibilities and options, and say these two gentlemen seem to be smart enough to see possibilities.
Oh, they're asking the right questions.
Yeah. Well, and also things like, custom milling in the future.
All kinds of things are crazy when it comes to Central American countries.
No, they're having them reprocessed, but I do not entirely trust the people who are reprocessing them. Okay? Without going into details, it's entirely possible somebody is sneaking some gold out of the reprocessing. It's not super high security, so we shall see. But As I say, all these things, we're just waiting on a whole bunch of assays.
Well, they're not exactly giving away the tailings. The guys that reprocess the tailings will reprocess them for a fee.
Mm-hmm.
But they only talk about the gold. Nobody talks about any potential silver, for instance.
Well, that's because it's inconsequential in terms of money.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm sure it isn't to those people.
oh, 1/100th of the gold? Yeah. I mean, assuming it's 50/50.
And I'm still wondering just how much residual mercury sits around in those arastras and collects other people's metals.
I have no idea. Hey, Jean-Francois.
Jean-Francois says, meeting now, Tahani, meeting now hard scheduled in 2 weeks. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Cool.
So, anyhow, so let's say we've got a lot of possibilities right now. We have no idea what's actually happening. We will find out within the next week or two. Just depends on how fast the samples come back. Then we can, well, they got to drastically increase the sampling in the mill process itself. Then those samples need to be analyzed. Hopefully, hand panning will give pretty actionable intelligence on that. We will see how it correlates with the assay results. And from there, we can make some plans. Yeah, a week or two should give us enough data to really get a darn good idea of what's going on there. So we shall see what we shall see.
We shall
Very
see.
frustrating for everybody right now to have a whole lot of ideas and no really solid data. We'll find out, Jeff. They're off to the lab right now for fire assay and multi-element analysis. That's a very good question. It's in process. Along with a crap of other stuff, it's in process. As a matter of fact, we might have a good idea tomorrow because we did a bottle roll on some tailings. So in terms of free milling gold and stuff, we should have a pretty good idea what's in it.
Is that bottle roll getting done just for gold and silver?
I think it's multi-element.
Okay.
I think all three that we shipped over, I think we did multi-element on those because we don't know squat right now. You know,
I was just curious.
and you really need to know what's getting dissolved.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
You will get no argument from me, dude.
I don't think they're stockpiling. I know they've stockpiled a bunch of concentrates, but let's say we shall see what we shall see in terms of the what's actually going on. If somebody is not being entirely truthful with them in terms of the people who are reprocessing their tailings, well, then they can always do that themselves pretty easily. Not going to be too hard.
I personally think they need to get their whole process under their control in the first place.
Yeah, well, they're working on it. As I say, these guys, it's unusual that someone with this little theoretic knowledge is anywhere near this far along. But after hearing the story, I understand how it got there. And the people that we're dealing with understand the situation pretty well. They understand what needs to be done. They're perfectly willing to done it. And so I think we can make some major improvements pretty quick. Ah,
So I
cool.
did research in dryland dredging and come across a... Oh, wow. That sounds cool.
Douglas, that is relatively imprecise, although, you know, we could do spot tests on those now.
Yeah.
You know, they've settled.
Yeah.
They're clean.
I'm thinking we...
That's a good idea. We should do a spot test on those.
I think we will.
Let me, where did I put the, yeah, there it is.
Oh, I shall get everything set up and we can do spot tests.
Yep. These were the ones we did, right?
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, you spun those down.
yeah,
Yeah.
phone notes.
I mean, here's some results. T stands for tailings, stands for concentrates. Okay. That looks like they're getting a pretty good concentration ratio, but it's not showing in the gold in the pan. What does that mean? I don't know. That's why the laboratory is doing their thing. But that shows a pretty interesting result. And that's more what we'd expect to see if they're getting a good concentration. But again, we're not getting a real clear picture from the tests we've run so far. You know, it could be, Brian. Absolutely, it could. We don't know. The bottle rolls, one was on roasted sulfides, one was on sulfide cons, the other was on tailings. So that'll help give us a good idea as to what's going on. Some of the laboratory tests are not only on those samples too, but also what I call depleted cons and depleted roasted cons, where I've panned all the visible gold I can get out.
Well, I will get us. I will see about getting us some.
Because you can't do it in my house in 10 minutes, Douglas. It's in process. They're at labs. The samples are there. They're paid for. We're just waiting them to get our darn results back. That's why we're not doing it, because it is being done, you know?
It's being done by people that have really good equipment to do it with.
No, not yet, Chris. Aside from the fact I'm not so sure which ones. We were able to find in the Bible of assaying, what was it, 6 different tests?
Yeah.
That they used back in the 20s to figure out how much gold is in solution. So
yeah, they were actually used to determine that your cyanide solution was depleted, but several mines used them to test the gold.
Yeah, this indicates to us that the KD3 will.
Chris says, "Did you do some basic wet chemistry tests?"
No, I didn't. One day in-house. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you got a big lab, well, not necessarily a big lab, but a complex lab and the people to run it, we have none of those. We can't do that in a week. Say, we're doing the best we can with what we have to deal with. You know? We just have to wait for the lab to get their stuff done. I agree, Douglas, that in the long run, they probably want to set up an assay lab. That could be another money-making opportunity.
Oh, when will the KD3 be ready?
Well, these were KD3 precipitations of concentrates and tailings bottle rolls. I don't know about that, Brian.
Or a bid on how to make it, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure on that. We'll have to think before we do anything else. I've been told how to make it. I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but we can try it ourselves. On the other hand, I sent some KD3 down there with them. So they can get a spot plate and do it themselves and see what happens. We did all this in front of them, showed them how it's done, etc., etc.
Yeah, also showed them how to do some basic assays, some basic fireworks, since they're going to have a.
And so, as I say, if this works, if the panning works, and gives good.
Brian says he'll help test it, which will be great.
Yeah. But again, it has to be done. I mean, somebody's actually had to physically accomplish these tasks, and it's going as fast as it can be done right now.
Rocket fuel, Brian Smith. Yeah. Technically.
I don't know if the hydrate's a rocket fuel, but it might be. Let's say Tricky Dicky told me what's supposedly in it. It's fairly simple. Okay. Um, you mean with like an ICP or an AA, Douglas? Or some kind of calorimetric test? That's what theoretically this is, although since nobody done it before, or not with their ore, we had no idea. Say this may show us, okay, yeah, it works fine. I don't know. We shall find out. I've never seen a result that dark.
I have known standards on hand that I check my calorimetric test against.
We can discuss it privately by email if you want, Jean-Francois. I'll be happy to tell you as long as you keep it confidential for now. Calorimetric. Yeah, exactly. All you got to do is get all that stuff down there with somebody who knows what they're doing, and by that time we'll have already accomplished it. That's what I say. We're moving as fast as we can. You know, setting up a lab right now is not the priority. Yeah, getting the mill working is the priority.
And also, we're trying to figure out whether the KD3 works with cyanide the way it works with Eco Goldex. So right, exactly. I will be spot testing those bottles this week.
No problem, Jean-Francois. So I'd be happy to tell you privately. But yeah, I agree, Douglas. In the long run, that makes perfect sense. But
I'm going to be testing our bottle rolls with my standard Eco Goldex spot test. This starting tonight, Douglas. I had to wait for them to settle.
And then we'll have assays tomorrow, and we can compare them. And that'll be something we can show you next week. Okay? Until then, just takes time. I'm sure she could, Doug, if she was in Central America and had a lab set up.
I'm going to do calorimetric tests on our bottle.
He's talking about on site. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But that takes time. It can't be done in a week. We'll be getting
results in a week. And I have my standards here, Douglas. And it takes longer than an hour to get a result.
Well, you can blow dry it.
Yeah, that actually changes the result. Yes, I have calorimetric standards for my Eco Goldex.
Yeah. Does that act the same as a cyanide standard? Don't know. Again, there's various variables.
I am not in the assay business. I am in the business of keeping an eye on our process control at the moment.
And me.
We do not do precision assays. Mm-hmm. I don't have the lab for precision assays. I wish I had the lab for precision assays. I wish I had a furnace that actually worked right now.
Yeah. We should have verification as to whether or not two entirely different methods will give useful results very shortly. And the gold ppm is absolute. So, but the thing is, what kind of interferences and additional stuff can happen? You know.
This year, I am going to be getting more than the gold standards that I already have. But we don't need pure gold standard at the moment because we haven't been using it.
We're not in the process of getting an assay lab set up at this time. We're in the process of getting a mill set up at this time. Good enough will be good enough for now. Then we can set up the lab later in a year or so. There's a lot of other factors involved besides analysis. Okay? After all, in the long run, analysis is only there to assist production. Okay?
I will be right back.
I mean, these guys, there was a lot of mining stuff they're uninformed about. There's certain methodologies they hadn't dealt with before in terms of the way you do business safely. For example, especially if you're a third world country and you are not a local and don't necessarily have a lot of pull, you don't pay up front for a service. You know, let us suppose just we were discussing the possibility that they might want to rent a bulldozer with operator over there to do a particular job. And so you got this dozer job. Okay? Don't even know if the dozer can do the job. I need to have 121 volts at full power draw right now, Kodak. From this trailer, I'm getting 150. And I'm not 150, 115. So the heating element's putting about 1,240 watts instead of 4,000 it would have if we had a higher voltage here. I can't change the voltage in the trailer too easy. Out there we have a generator.
The goddess wants a gas furnace.
Anyhow, to get back to this, they have a proposed dozer job. So what I told them to do is, first of all, you go to the guy with the dozer, you show him the job. Okay? Can you rip that rock that deep in this area? That's the question. Okay? And then if he says, yes, I can do it for X dollars. Okay? Okay, fine. You do not pay him X dollars and then hope he does the job. You say, what's the mobilization? Okay? And that, in this case, it's pretty close by, a couple miles. So let's say it's 10%. Okay? You say, look, I'll pay you 10% to bring your dozer over here, and that will cover returning it and a little bit of profit.
Mm.
What?
Chris is still copying the furnace.
I have, and the voltage keeps changing, Chris. It was at 121. Then you add another 50 foot of extension cord, life changes. I don't want to get so little resistance that when I take it out to the ranch, all of a sudden it just burns up.
Kodak, I think this is what, our 5th or 6th rebuild?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I say it was working fine as long as I plugged it in to the wall socket right here. Anyhow, so you offer the guy, okay, I'll give you 10%, assuming the price is decent, to get it over here and get it back. And then as you do the job, you know, I will pay you for production, okay? In this case, it's like a certain area needs to go down so many feet. What jumper? I have no idea what you're talking about, Chris. I'm running it through a kilowatt meter to check all of those things, but I don't know what kind of jumper. You take care, Douglas.
Milestone payments, yep.
Exactly. You pay him as the job gets done. That way, say he's ripping and pushing and then hits stuff he can't rip anymore. Okay. You don't pay him for the stuff he can't do. Oh, you mean for later on if it gets too... Yeah, possibly. That's a little technical for my expertise, unfortunately, though.
I am just waiting. So far, the fairy god scientist is making things appear.
The problem with jumpering the element inside is that anything inside has got to take those huge temperatures, and trying to get a good connection that withstands those temperatures and stuff that you can then cut out later.
Well,
I'm not too worried. We're going to be moving out to the generator.
As I said, the fairy god scientist is beginning to make things appear. Sooner or later, an actual real furnace, meaning the kind that runs on gas.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I don't know how I'm going to connect a jumper that'll deal with, 2,500 degree temperatures, which is what the element's running probably, you know. But they were unaware of this. One of the things they needed done, the guy said, we'll do it for this amount of money. They gave them the money, they came in, they tried to do the job, they were completely and utterly ineffective, and then left with the money. And again, you're a foreign country, you're from away, yeah, you're not going to sue them, okay? Not successfully, okay?
Just made out of the same wire.
I know, how do I connect it without getting resistance? Because when I do that, they get a real hot spot right there, Chris. Been there, done that already. And I've had elements burn through and then put them back together again. Yeah, that's a real hot spot, But anyhow, so they were unaware that things were structured this way. They were unaware of options in mining contracts. So again, we did a lot of stuff. Somebody on one of these live streams suggested a product called auto stem charges, and I looked those up. It looked real interesting. Essentially, they're probably a smokeless powder charge, but it's a cartridge. You drill a hole, slide it in the hole, set it off. It automatically plugs the I know Chris will be out at the ranch in weeks.
Shortly, we will be someplace where there's sufficient power.
Yeah, the generator makes plenty. Plus,
and someday the fairy god scientist will decide that I am worthy and a real furnace.
Well, if Dan is the guy that fixed Dan's trailer, we would have already had a 220 volt Vasella furnace. Well, Sierra Blaster has a couple of problems compared to the auto stem. Okay, I don't know the price on the auto stem motor. Sierra Blaster uses a tool that has a lot of weight to stem the charge. Okay, understandably, that's why they call it auto stem. You don't need that. Now, not only does this make it a bit simpler in many ways, but one of the problems with the Sierra Blaster is you have to get the initiation wires of the charge in a little groove in the blasting head. If you screw that up in any way, when you put it in, you cut the wire and now you have failure to initiate. Okay? The auto stem doesn't use anything like that. You just slide it in, wire it up, and push the button. The other thing is, auto stem has charges this big. Anything from like this big to that big. So it has a lot more oomph if needed than a Sierra Blaster. I haven't done any more research on it at this time, but yeah, it looks a lot easier to use and has some pretty big charges. So let's say it's an interesting thing. They were unaware of Sierra Blasters, auto stem, anything like that. They're using demolition hammers. They weren't aware of how, power to weight ratio a Hilti is,
And Chris says he had a fix for that, but never got around to testing it.
Yeah. So I do not know, Honey Bunny. I didn't get to that level of research because it didn't apply that much to me. And
I'm still thinking fireworks.
they're down in Central America, so who knows what the rules are down there. You can't own guns down there very well either. So, it's an interesting question. These guys are smart enough to ask the questions themselves when they get into that. They were unaware of things like their guys are just taking these, 30-pound. That's a good brand. Was it DeWalt? Whatever. I think they were DeWalt hammers.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyhow. Huh? Little one?
Leupheeup here. No idea.
Okay. So anyhow, when you're
He
trying,
says these split rocks can make own propellants out of table salt and antifreeze.
sure. But anyhow, when you're trying to use a demolition hammer on a face in front of you, if you're doing it by hand, you got to pick that up to drive it in the face, which is very, very tiring. Okay? And so I solved this problem years ago when I was running the exact same issue. You take a piece of thin wall metal tubing, say conduit. You take another piece of thin wall metal tubing that slides inside it. You drill a hole inside and weld a nut on it. Take a bolt, weld a T-handle to it. Now you've got an extension. At the top, you weld on a piece of like 1/4-inch rod just bent to where it will cradle the chuck of your demolition hammer, and you can sit there and extend and retract this so that you can get the right length. Take your hammer, put it in there, and that's taking the majority of the weight, and then you just drive it into the face, you know? Possibly, Shane? You know, there's all kinds of different ways of doing it. They make expanding grouts and such. Yeah, they don't have compressor and pneumatics at this point, Chris. They're using electrics, which with that one place they were working where it's puddles of water on the floor. I mean, the whole floor is covered with a little bit of water. Looks a little sketchy. I can make a lot cheaper thing than that. This way, honey bunny. I can do this for $20, you know, and weld it just about anywhere. There's one little weld. That's it. Everything. Well, this is welded, but yeah, it's pretty easy to do. Yeah. Interesting, honey bunny. Makes sense, Shane. Again, I'm not an expert on expanding grout. There's all different ways to do stuff, and they're aware of none of them. So it was, information-wise, they were trying to drink out of a fire hose. It was challenging for them. They were doing a good job, though. And so they were doing a great job for the situation they were in.
So basically what you're telling me is the kiln that is showing up is yet another electric.
Yeah, 230 volt, high quality Vasella professional quality kiln. Yeah.
So it's going to live at Lauren's house.
Live at Lauren's house. Yeah.
I shall continue to make obeisance to the great fairy god scientists in the vain hope that someday my suffering shall be acknowledged and a gas shows up.
Well, we need to talk to Max again too if we're ever headed down towards Bishop. You know, he's got kiln. But yeah, it's you know, they were doing really good for their level of knowledge and the situation they were in. Okay, I'm very favorably impressed with how things went. We had a great time too, by the way. Even I had a good time. They were good-natured, easy to deal with. And so
It's about like taking our technology to Africa. Yeah, pretty much.
yep. And
Recipe for expanding grout if you wanted to write it down.
could you email that to me, Honey Bunny? I'd appreciate it.
With instructions.
For a good gold, possibly Rock Butcher. Not at this moment, but it would not surprise me. It's a good.
As a matter of fact, Rock, we had already mentioned to them that if they were looking for a good exploration geologist, we knew a fantastic one.
Yeah. We may very well be going down there this winter.
And yes, Chris, I'm absolutely aware of that, and my furnace usually is running all day when I'm working.
But anyhow, as I say, it's entirely possible we'll be going down there this winter sometime, and that might be the time where it would be a good time to do a geologist consult also, because at that point, if we got the mill part figured out and the mining issues pretty much routinized, then the next question is reserves, etc. And that's where your expertise would come in very handy. Okay? From that, as I say, just right now they're really focused on getting that mill running.
Jeff Bybee says, wonder about having a movable arch overhead and suspend the hammer drill from above, so functionally weightless. Now that's an idea that would be really cool.
Well, it's possible, but then you have to move that around, whereas a little stick basically is fairly easy to manipulate.
Well, Brian, you saying road trip like that makes me think, But, oh yeah. I'm pretty much aware of that, Chris, but I am just sick and tired of this fucking electric BS.
Yeah, because she hasn't got to use a gas one yet, so she hasn't got time to get sick and tired of that.
I want both kinds. I want my friggin' options. I am sick to death of having to rely on a goddamn generator.
Yeah, well.
And yeah, Rock, who else would we suggest? You're like the best field geologist we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that he's the only field geologist we've ever met doesn't, matter.
Take care, Jean-Francois. We should have a significant number of results by then. This will be a whole lot less nebulous.
Yeah. I actually saw one of those.
Yeah. Then you just have to constantly keep changing the height, but that can be done like with a chain and stuff pretty easy. But yeah. So there's ways you can do it. They weren't aware of any of these things. Okay? So again, we were able to pretty quickly come up with potential improvements on all kinds of stuff. So I would say they were quite happy when they left. Wouldn't you, little one?
Yep. They had actionable plans and they started working on stuff. And they have checked in a couple of times since then. So.
Checked in. I talked to them about the Eco Goldex.
Yeah. You talked to them about that on Saturday and they told you that they had done something. I forget what it was.
Yeah, it was about the samples. Yeah. But anyhow, I say, we shall see what we shall see. But yeah, we're kind of sitting on pins and needles right now, waiting to get some results back in, and then that'll allow us to make some kind of, quality recommendations. Right now, it's all very, very nebulous, and we should do a lot better here shortly.
Oh, really? I'm just hard play ever.
Right now, they're pretty much just tunneling, Brian. There's no scoping as far as I know. And there, what are you doing?
Watching a commercial.
On erectile dysfunction. Well, gee whiz, I'm getting
Some pretty simple stamp there.
hard, I say there's all kinds of possibilities. I'm thinking another thing you could do, because they got pretty high wear rates on the hammer mill, which is understandable. You can go rolls crushers, you know. You can do a couple sets of rolls crushers and get it down from 1 inch to, eighth of an inch pretty easy with just 2 sets of rolls. And your wear rates are really modest on a rolls crusher. So, yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities. But what they don't want to do right now is rebuild the damn mill. They want it to run as best as it can quick, right now. So that's why we're looking more at modifications as opposed to replacement. I would agree. It's possibility they might wind up throwing away a lot of that stuff. Close enough, Rock, but I'm not at liberty to say publicly. And as I say, it's just one of those things. It's a very, very, very interesting situation. We had a lot of fun. They were easy to work with. Really liked that. And
Took notes, asked the right questions, actively wanted to learn things.
Yeah, as I say, these guys, I think they're going to do real well. And that's pretty close, Rock.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea where this is going to go in terms of luck, because we got to wait for assay results and stuff, and we'll go from there. We'll have plenty of time to figure it out, Rock. I'm pretty sure they're not going to need your services for quite a few months. I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to go down there with you, at the same time, so to speak, and meet up down there and do stuff. That would be like way, way cool.
Yeah, so that we can learn.
Uh-huh. Exactly. I have no idea, Rock. These guys will. I'll say we have plenty of time to set it up. Because right now they're focused on milling. Not even mining. Just milling.
Yeah.
Well, we need to redo our passports. By the way, if they're less than 5 years expired, I hear, it's pretty easy to renew them. Otherwise, you kind of got to go through the thing. Let's see what we got. Passport.
He's checking something right now. Road trip. Yeah, I have to figure out what kind of shots a person needs to go to third world Central American countries, because I'm allergic to a lot of vaccines.
Can we get ours?
And I don't like flying.
Can we get ours at the same time, little one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe we did.
You got eyes. What's the expiration date?
2019. 6 years.
Yeah. We'll just have to redo.
Well, it's not quite 6 years. It's 5 years and 11 months or 8
If
months.
it's less than 5 years.
Yeah.
Was what I was
Well, we're
told.
kind of screwed.
Yeah, we'll have to get those done, but we got quite a few months. Again, right now, my health is indeterminate. And
Sure thing, we could swamp them all at once.
yeah. So I'm unable to travel at the current time. At least I'm unable to travel safe. I seem to be doing fine, but we do not know that at this time.
Yeah, and I don't want him just herring off. I don't want to be herring off to some third world country until we know exactly what's going on with
Yeah.
the cardiac.
You take care shortly for this. I'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. Anyhow, I have been lucky lately. I've been getting fresh eggs. Ooh, fresh eggs are good. Yeah, Shane, ours apparently expired in 2019. I don't even know why. Well, I do know why we had them, because we were going to be going through Canada. Well, anyway. we were going to be going through Canada on our way to Alaska, and Yo-Yo said we needed to have passports, which I'm pretty sure we did. You know, I mean, the way things have gotten. So
we're gonna have to get real IDs just to fly domestically.
yeah, I know. I have a real ID. I just haven't told them that I changed my address. At the moment, gold is $33.20 and silver is $33.08. Platinum is $988, palladium is $932, and rhodium is $51.50. So things are still going good, you know. Hi, wage slave. But yeah, I mean, by all rights, it sounds like a very interesting project, and they told Bear flat out that if he had not just had a heart attack, they were going to try to talk him and he and I into going down there to help them out.
Well, they tried to talk Lauren too, but he's got stuff on
And
the fire already.
we told them they could talk to Lauren, and Lauren's already looking at this winter. He's very much tweaking on the, you know, because he was already looking at, he wants to go to Australia, and this is kind of sort of on the way to Australia, I suppose.
Not really, but yeah.
Well, it's a minor detour.
It's in Helena.
It's a minor detour. You go to Central America, and then you, well, you go to Central America, then you go straight south, and then you bear right. I mean, it's not like it's that hard.
So, anyhow. Okay, you take care.
Yeah, rhodium
Take
is,
care of yourself.
no, he's saying because he said rhodium is crazy.
No, he said I'll show myself.
Yeah, because he said rhodium is crazy. 5150 is the police code for mentally ill, crazy, out. Never mind.
Okay.
He doesn't get memes, okay?
Okay.
He
Anyhow,
doesn't get it. He never gets anything. Don't
so
even go there.
that's basically what's been going on, which it's been a real fun and
But yeah, I
interesting
mean,
week.
if we needed to build a team, all we need now is an engineer to help. I mean,
Alex.
yeah. I mean, we need an engineer, we need an exploration geologist, which would be Rock. We need Lauren to help me with process control and logistics. We need you. You're the older, experienced eye candy.
Oh, really? Okay. So you're gonna try and pimp me out to those girls down there, huh?
No, but I do need to raise your rates. You're not keeping up with inflation, dude.
Yeah. She wants to increase my consulting fees, basically, which is not unreasonable. I like doing stuff so much I don't worry too much about what I'm charging, you know. And she's like, "Yeah, you can't just do that free
Thank
phone
you,
calls
honey
all
buddy.
the time stuff."
Well, the free phone call, the free
Thank you.
consultation on the phone is one thing. If it's short questions that are, you know,
Yeah.
5-10 minutes, or you can drop them a file that we already have in the computer. You know, here's a list of websites you want to go to.
Yeah. But
To
anyhow,
buy this, that, or
so I
the other.
told her she can be my manager, i.e. my pimp.
Well, somebody has to do it. 60-40 split. I get 60, you get 40.
Anyhow, so yeah, it's been a really fun and interesting week. Our health seems to be doing okay under the circumstances. Yesterday when we were hiking up down that hill, I wasn't having any trouble with shortness of breath, but then I was taking it carefully too. And yeah, plan would be to get some video and stuff. And did he survive, honey buddy?
My friend went to Europe, and the cost of the visas shocked me.
Yep.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing is you never know what the visas are going to cost.
So
But,
we have no idea at this point. We have plenty of time to figure it out because I can't go right now anyway.
yeah, and since they did say it would be all expenses paid.
I'm also looking at, because these guys in particular, they may want to, in the long run, go to impact milling. So I've been looking at redesigning my impact mill to something larger, more solid, and you know, a real small production mill, The one we got right now basically does about 200 pounds an hour when things are working right. I'd want something to do about 500 pounds an hour. And later this week, Eva's going to see about getting the CAD program.
Honey Bunny
installed on
said
this
it was a
computer.
woman, actually.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
did she survive?
Did she survive? Exactly, yeah. But anyhow, so then I'll start designing.
Axial feed, Chris says.
Basically, yeah. Very similar to what I'm doing right now, but with lessons learned incorporated from a clean sheet and designed to be bigger and more, just more capacity in a number of different ways. And also more flexible in terms of it'll be real easy to try different exhaust options and positions and angles and things like that. So I say the whole schlemiel will be a lot.
Well, you're far enough south how they ought to know what the chili mill is. Yeah.
Chilean mill, yeah. They're using arrasters, not Chilean mills. You know. But say okay, we will talk it over, Chris. But
I'll help you with the design on that. Yeah.
yeah.
Chris says also sent you to honey sent that recipe to other people too. Well, thank you for the recipe, honey.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So anyhow, that's in the works. The instruction manual on basic gold extractive metallurgy seems to be doing pretty well. The few people who have looked at it found it to be good work. I'm sure it's been a couple of weeks, when I go through it again, I'll probably have additions, modifications, amplifications, and that sort of thing.
Arashra, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I believe it's an E on the end.
Well, they call them, but they shorten it to Astras down there, which actually means star.
Yeah, I know it does.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And
What? You're kidding me, Chris. Good Lord. How annoying. Want me to send it again?
Brian says KD3.
Okay, we'll think about it, Brian. Anyhow,
Well, first we have to get the stuff to try.
you want me to?
know.
Can you resend the file for the book? Yeah. Can you get in my email, the little one, or do you want to wait till we're done?
As soon as we're done, Chris, I will send that out.
Okay, let me write it down here. Book to Chris. Okay. So, anyhow, I say we shall see that, but that's kind of in process too. I'm thinking that with my health situation and everything, I may wind up focusing more on building and selling milling equipment and becoming more of a mill consultant or whatever. I don't know, but I got the feeling 6 months ago that this year was going to be a
Shane says one
transitional.
donkey or two and bring carrots for donkeys.
Yeah. Thank you, honey bunny. Might as well, Chris. I say I'll send it later. It's on the thing here. But yeah, that's kind of where I think this is heading. The big mining companies don't need any help, but the small miners need a lot of help in the extractive metallurgy thing. the average person just has no idea the various complexities and nuances of the extractive metallurgy part of this whole thing. And so that might be the thing. Plus, most people who make small scale milling equipment, I'm not terribly impressed with what they do. And I think I can probably do better. So I figure that might be. Plus, if I expire, then Eva can still make a residual, even if I'm not around to earn it, because somebody else can be fabricating and selling these things, etc. So I'm just getting the feeling that that's kind of the way it's going to go. I'm going to need to find a fabricator that I can work with. I know that guy down in Missoula. I never really met him, but he had that in mind. He's a welder fabricator. Lauren could easily do this, but he's got so many other irons in the fire he won't be able to. And so, never make yourself worth more to your spouse dead than alive, honey bunny. Yeah, so there's all kinds of things. There's a guy here that can cut the parts, no problem, but then somebody's got to put it together. So we shall see. I also might. There's a good possibility we'll be heading over to Mount Baker in the not too distant future. Depending on what's exactly going on with this mill, I think a Mount Baker table would be a much better finishing table than what they've got. I have no idea how much he charges for them, but the design seems to have some advantages, I think. So, let's say there's a lot of interesting things going on. Life is, let's say, it's interesting and fun right now.
Actually feed instead of the crushers we use is reverse perpendicular feed. What are the advantages, please? Good question.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what reverse perpendicular feed means. I'm pretty sure you have possibly, Chris, don't know. The thing that my mill does, a Stutenroth, for example, it has a housing which has wear bars in here to make a chamber and a 3-bladed rotor with easily replaced wear plates. You feed in here and it comes out here. Okay? Now, strengths of the Stutenroth. It's simple. It's tough. These are big, heavy parts. They'll handle a lot of wear. Okay? That's the good part. There is no classification. When you dump it in here, it's still coming out 50% plus 40 mesh. Okay? Which is too coarse a grind, which means you have to have some kind of classification and recirculation. The original Stutenroth mills had a big circular classifier around here. And it would basically, your stuff would drop into this, and some would go through the screen. The rest would be carried up. They had little paddles there, and then it would dump into a chute here. It would get to this point, and then it would dump and come back around, which made a lot of sense. The mill, because this rotor has a clear line of sight out here, stuff can come flying out at high velocity, so you got to put in baffles to keep that from happening, and that causes your ore to generally jam up. What?
Honey Bunny is talking and Chris is talking.
Yeah. Okay. But anyhow, that's what I think you're talking about. Okay, in terms of the
Chris says axial feed allows material to enter through the center and get flung out to hit the liner for the first impact, and then good wear distribution.
Yeah. If you've got
Muscle says 20,000, I think. I believe he's talking about Mount Baker's finishing table.
could be. That's like 10 times what they paid for the other ones. I'm not even sure we need any kind of finishing table.
Patrick says, well, I made it.
Okay. Anyhow, if you feed the material in here, then the paddles will take it. But if you put your exhaust over here, if you take a look, air comes in near the shaft and exits at the perimeter. This essentially becomes a blower. And as such, you can use it both to transfer the material once milled, and also you can do some air classification right there to get the material the right size. My mill, that little 6-inch one I've got, does about, what was it, 90% passing 60, one pass. Okay, big difference. And so not only does it get you a finer grind, single pass through the mill, but it then transfers the material for you. In our case, we are literally blowing it 6 feet or more up. I think it's about 8 feet to the dust collector.
Muscle says a 4x8 is 14.9 and a 5x12 is 24.9.
Okay, thank you, Muscle.
Ouch.
Yeah. But anyhow, so that's the thing. It's not just a mill. It also does your classification and your transportation after milling all in one device. Okay? So that's the kind of reason. That's why I like the axial flow. Also, what happens here is in order to get to the exhaust port, it has to work its way over, and while it's doing that, it's getting beat up and beat up and beat up. Okay? And so that's why I like the axial flow. Okay? Because it does more than just break the material. It also classifies it and then transfers it without, a conveyor belt or a slurry pump or using gravity to go downhill, in which you need a hillside to do. So that's why I like the axial flow. And when I got, I think I did pretty good for a prototype. Okay. It's got issues. It's not perfect, but darn thing works. So, and it's easy to maintain in terms of simple to change parts out.
Oh, I can see this is exactly why anybody should want to make their own machinery. Because don't get me wrong, I love Mount Baker. The guys there are, Jason and the guys are really great. They make excellent equipment, but dear Lord, the price.
Yeah. So anyhow, I can see one of those in my future too. We got Jeff Kablock showing up in about a month and a half, theoretically, and he was going to give us about 10 tons of ore from one of his dumps that he has on his property. He's got other stuff he may be doing there that he wants some help with, but that 10 tons of ore would be a good thing to test a bigger mill and see what happens. I like the hybrid system we've got. I think it's highly efficient and works pretty well. I mean, my beloved goddess here can run 200 pounds an hour by herself, And whether it's a laser cutter or plasma cutter, either one will do fine for these things. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's about 30 miles away. Jeff Kablock is. His stuff's about 30 miles away. Yeah, just truck it over here.
10
No.
tons, huh?
Yeah, exactly. He's supposed to run, an ounce to the ton roughly.
Yeah, the price is reasonable for what it is and where it's made, you know? I mean, like I said, I love Mount Baker. I think they make amazing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
getting it down to Central America would be very difficult. And
Well, these kind of mills that I design and the Rogue wavetable that I've built and tested in the past too, they're all simple enough designs that I can build it. Now, if I can build it, any decent third world fabricator can build it, without machine tools. And so it's the sort of thing, to go to Central America with one of these, it's highly likely that what you would do is just build it there.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing of it.
So that's the idea. I mean, this and the Rogue Wave are easily fabricatable by any decent fabricator. And we shall just see. I mean, I was talking to Lauren today about, what kind of precision can you achieve with just a handheld plasma cutter or a torch if you're good? And it should be doable right there. Another possibility, Brian, I don't know. I'm not sure what the shipping time and cost would be. Okay, that's going to be a lot of parts. Okay, a lot of weight, and so I don't know. Since the vast majority of it is just straight lines on plate, I say a good fabricator can probably hand cut that good enough to make it work. Okay. Now, I would certainly much prefer to have a laser do everything, or a plasma, either one. All the holes, all that other stuff.
That exit.
Yeah, this one here is probably going to be 1,000 pounds of steel. So, say, working on that too. Again, I've got lots of interesting stuff going on, so I'm a happy camper. I am having trouble sleeping though, because I'll wake up about 4 in the morning and little designs are bouncing around in my head. Exactly, Chris. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Say a good third world fabricator can probably do this without a problem.
And that's what you want.
I'm not sure what you mean by make it out of a Connex box. This stuff has to be some tough stuff, Brian. Tough stuff. Yeah, I got a guy that's got a CNC plasma cutter about 5 miles over there that I've used before too. So, see, fun times. Anyone got any questions or whatever before we call it an evening? Well, my machine eats 1/2 inch rock with no problem. It's only a 6-inch wide. So if you were talking about mine, it hasn't been a problem. And it's been dealing with hard quartz and stuff too. But there's some wear parts and stuff. I'd redesign it a bit, And there's certain parts like on the chamber lid here, where this port comes in, it wears right there. So I'd put a replaceable wear part, probably drill some holes in the end plate and just plug weld it. And when it gets so worn out that a little bit of hard facing isn't doing the job anymore or whatever, you can just torch out those holes, put a new one on, plug weld it in place too. So, I say, I've learned a lot of lessons from that other one. We'll go ahead and see what's up. But I think we got some fun stuff going on here.
Oh yeah, things are getting interesting.
Yep. Okay, anyone got any questions or anything at this point? Because throat's getting a little sore. Nothing serious. Keep yakking. My knees and hips were probably the worst part of last week. Did a lot of standing and panning.
We can design out some of those sore spots on a bigger mill. Yep.
Oh yeah. That's it. There's things that.
Well, I'm pretty sure between all y'all, it's going to come out really well.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy to figure out. Ugh. Yeah, well, let's suppose that, let's just theoretically say this will do 500 pounds an hour fully classified. The guys down there in Central America want to do 1 ton an hour. So they take 4 of those machines. Make a lot of sense to just build them there. You know? I'm pretty sure somewhere down there somebody's got a computer controlled plasma cutter too.
Huh. A simple roller mill.
Yeah, you got a picture of that one out at the ranch. Is that on my computer yet?
Yeah, I sent those to your email, dude.
Okay. Well, do you have it where you can access it right quick?
I will move.
Okay. I got a picture of a simple roller module.
Shane, he's going to email you something. Does he have your email address?
I was going to just show him the picture on that.
Here, I'll get it up
Pretty
in
simple.
brief.
You know?
Well, I'm sitting here making money while you're yakking, so.
Well,
All right, let me get in here, get in your email. Because I already sent it to you once. If you lost it, I don't know what you do.
I'm saying, well, you sent it to me, but we didn't put it on the computer so we can show them. She's downloading it from the email onto the computer so then she can display it. Okay.
Hold on a second. I gotta get back out of here,
Okay.
back out of there, back into here, and get you on the show screen. All right,
Okay.
now. Damn it! Go away, you stupid thing.
Okay. So you're gonna make one of them fancy hurry guides? Yeah, I could probably do that, Pat. So there's the lower roller module on a new RC46.
Muscle Up says, good to see you and Eva again after the couple of years it's been. Sorry to hear about your health. Say some prayers for you. Good night. Good night, Muscle Up.
Good night.
Go
I'm not
around
even
the
sure who he is.
hexagon.
Okay, so there's a roller module right there. And the left roller just has flange bearings that holds it rigidly in place. The reason it has 2 sprocket chains is one is a drive in and the other is a drive out. Okay? The roller on the right side, you can see it's more complicated there. It has 2 bearings that ride on rails and that are tensioned by the and the straps you see on the far right those are actually spring steel. If you can show the other picture easily enough, little one.
Hold on a second. I gotta come over here and do several things to
I
get
know
to
you
it.
have to, but this is why I had you take different pictures. No, not that one, the one that's on the side. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on a second, guys. I'm going to get rid of the excess.
Okay. What?
Okay.
Now this. Good night, Brock.
Okay. The bolts to the outside of the mill chamber. I'd go around with a hexagon or octagon plate on the outside with bolts that go all the way through the front to back plate, easy to take off and change out.
Yeah. Anyhow, this is the side view of that roller mill. You can see the other roller sits on those bearings. Those are standard bearings. You just get them at the bearing supply. They ride on those guides and is tensioned with the long thread bolt there on the right hand side. The plate that it goes through is actually spring steel. It's bolted to the top and the bottom goes into a slot so that as the roller moves a little bit as it hits things. What? I can't read a damn thing.
I know, that's why I'm telling you.
Okay.
Pasta maker, yeah, this is the guy that is friends with Brock. Shane says, because I have a big TIG welder, arc welder, plasma cutter, chop saw, acetylene torch, ain't nothing to build.
Yeah.
Wage slave, Chris is talking to Wage Slave,
Okay.
and Honey says,
Those are roller bearings. Heavy
Bronze.
duty roller bearings.
bronze bearings, bushings is what she
No,
would use.
they're heavy duty roller bearings. Okay. Standard industrial bearings. Anyhow, and so you can change the gap between the rollers. Typically, there'd be zero gap. You'd have the movable roller pressed against the stationary roller, and that spring on the end there allows it to work just a little bit as stuff goes through so things don't break and seize. But there's a simple roller module. That's a double rolls crusher there. Okay, now can I see the chat? Okay.
All right, I'm going to get off this screen, guys, and get back to him. Give me a second here.
Oh,
There you
I could have
go.
left that, but anyhow. So anyhow, that's how you build a roller module. I would recommend, if you do, make replaceable shells for the outside of the rollers. Find some kind of tubing or whatever, preferably an alloy steel of some sort, that you can press onto a roller and then make the roller, and then the replaceable shells. Then when it wears out, it's real cheap to to fix. Those there from Keene, I don't know what they are now. They used to be $500 each. They're probably $1,000 each now. Exactly. I say it's not novel engineering at all. It's standard stuff. Say it's not complicated things. I say it may be that one could take, say a particular size of old hydraulic cylinder where the bore is scored to where you can't use it anymore, where you could cut it and press the section of hydraulic cylinder onto the outside of basically the shaft with an expansion there, and just press that on. Then when you roll, I bet you that's some hard ass steel. And then when you wear it out, you just take it off and press a new one on. Piece of cake. you know. There's probably some kinds of pipes or things like that that could work also. I just really don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet. Again, I got other things that I have to do, but the
But
knife
it says too soft.
could be. I don't know. What kind of tubing would you suggest? Is there some kind of drill pipe or things like that that would work well?
One more question. Go
Sure,
for it.
Brian. I'm waiting. But yeah, I say it would be nice to have some kind of shells you can put on them. Cylinder shafts or multi-layers of hardening, but it would work. Hydraulic cylinders are fairly ductile. They don't have metal to metal. Okay, makes sense, Chris. I say I'm sure somebody makes some kind of round tubing that would work. Does what? Does potassium dichromate also work on gold as silver? I have no clue. That's what I'm thinking, Chris. Something like that might work well.
No clue at all. If you find out, Brian, let us know.
Chris, you got any idea on what Brian just asked? Yeah. Smallest mesh size you're going for. I personally think about 100 mesh works well for most recoveries, but it depends. For what we're doing, 100 mesh works fine, but it's very, very ore dependent. I have no clue, Shane. Anyone have an idea how hard chrome moly is when it's being worked? Because this is something that would definitely work hardened. I think if I could find some winged donkeys, wage slave, I could make a lot more money. Yeah, you want something heavy walled. I'd like something at least a half-inch wall. You know. But I mean, I know there's companies out there that make rolls mills that have shells on them and stuff. It might be the sort of thing where you can buy ready-made ones at a reasonable price. I don't know.
Moly is more tough than hard, but it will work hard in some. Yeah. What is the diameter of the
6 inches diameter, 6 inches wide.
wage slave says train wheels?
I'm not disagreeing, wage slave. I was thinking of that the other day too.
Yeah, if you could get it out of them.
They're going to be really big and heavy. So you'd want something that was actually wider, more like a roller than a train wheel. I mean, you'd have to get rid of the flanges and things like that. But I really don't know.
Yeah, a wear tube is something we had been looking at.
I say good heavy wall, even if it's just a moderately hard steel. I don't know. You know. Another thing you could theoretically do is use a machine, or even if somebody's really good, just spin the roller in a jig and use wire feed to hard face it.
Need to look at the specs on those, but it might be a good core. Soft material to create braking friction.
Yeah.
And Chris sent a link. Yeah.
I know. You need to click on it to see it.
And as we've discovered before, hopefully this will work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it's best to send it in the email instead. It's good for other
Yeah,
people.
see, it just takes me to this YouTube chat.
Okay. Let's say it doesn't work with the.
Yeah, please email links, people. Libs one in Canada.
Well, that's not good for Canadians.
Yeah, wage slave says, "Oh God,
Pretty much, and they're worried about Trump. Ah,
we're not gonna go there.
you know,
We're not gonna go there."
I'm not. I'm really saying that. Yeah, that's not going to be good for Canada. I don't think. Anyhow.
Actually, there are 3 provinces that border Montana. As long as they kick all the leftists out, we'd like all 3, please.
You can grind hard facing smooth. I would agree, but if you were machine welding it, where it's being turned at a consistent thing, and
Fingers crossed it won't be a majority. That's a good point because you got a parliamentary system up there.
yeah. So if you had a machine welding it where it was a very steady bead, might work out okay. Hard facing wire is standard stuff.
Well, hopefully things go well for the Canadians.
Absolutely.
I mean, at least you guys are, have a nice, legitimate vote going on and people are involved and active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had a good way of hard facing it, you could just hard face them, one through the hard face, and then re-hard face it. Then the basic body of the roller could be pretty ordinary sort of steel. Nothing super exotic.
Well, I know you were talking about finding a way to make some wear sleeves to go on the rollers.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. Yes.
I know.
That's what they're talking about. But we can't, So, anyhow, again, that's a situation for another day. There are professionally manufactured production roller mills. It's my guess that if you have something very abrasive like quartz, it's probably going to work well in a rolls crusher, but be a bitch in something like a hammer mill because your wear rates are really high.
Your airlift out of your crusher was a great idea.
Thank you.
I'm wondering when he makes the crusher larger, how much it's going to increase the airflow.
Depends on how much air you let in and how you throttle it back at the other end. So anyhow, I'm thinking that, say, if it was me on a clean sheet with enough testing, I suspect the mill would look a lot different there in Central America. But I'm guessing that, the problem with a hammer mill, being an impact mill, it tends to have a lot of abrasion. When you've got if you're busting up, limestone, it'd be great. It'd last a long, long time. But if you're talking quartz, yeah, those hammers go pretty quick.
Could you salvage the old tungsten from old bits?
The tungsten carbide, you can get it out, but I'm not sure what you would do with it. Okay, how you would integrate that. That's what the hard facing has. It has carbide crystals that form in the hard face that when you lay it down, it's got carbide in it, when you get the big fancy companies, they do variable carbide quantities in the melt itself and stuff, I suspect hardened chain links wouldn't do nearly as well as hardened steel bars, which is what you have in a standard hammer mill. Yeah, well, that works fine for small scale stuff. If you're trying to do a ton of more day after day after day, week after week after week, you can be changing them out about every 3 hours, maybe. Yeah, you might be doing spray powder coating on the rollers with a hard facing would probably work okay. So there's all kinds of metallurgical possibilities. Again, not my problem for today.
Not your circus, not your monkeys.
Not
yet.
at the moment.
Yeah. Not at the moment.
Anyhow, so that's where we're at right now. Been a fun week. Going to be more fun weeks ahead. And we'll go from there.
Ablative snowplow steel for hammers.
The hammer mill they've got has got specially designed steels theoretically that should be fairly optimal for those things. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, but a hammer mill or something like that has to be balanced too. Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Yeah, you can get, like AR 500, I'm sure, in bars and stuff too. They make wear bars for things. Anyhow, I think I'm going to call it a night here. I'm getting a little tired. Anyone got any questions that needs answering right now?
Baker uses high chrome.
Yeah, I said there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Yeah. That might work. I mean, it's going to wear out in a relatively short while, but if they're easy to change,
God damn it.
not necessarily so bad.
Grr.
I was also thinking it'd probably be easiest if you could get the diameter of the outside of the roller.
Good night, Rock. Good luck up there with your with your continuing election.
Yeah, you take care, Rock. Good luck.
Hope the folks you voted for get in.
But
Christian's baler tube might work.
yeah, I don't know. If you can get the shells that are bigger than the bearings on the roller, it'll make it a lot easier to change them out because you won't have to pull the bearings off the shaft. That's another criterion to look at. Okay, folks. Well, I think we're going to call it a night here. Been fun. I'm planning on having an interesting week, and be interesting to see what we have for you next week. So, thanks everybody for showing up and your input and everything. How much trouble would you get for harboring a Canadian refugee?
Not much at all, because nobody would know.
I don't know.
They speak American, or they can when they try.
Yeah. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. Okay.